Hey everyone, it's Tiqqle, and in this video we're going over the Affliction Warlock in the alpha for Shadowlands. Now a lot's probably going to be changing, maybe, but we want to go through the changes. What we're going to do first is we're going to go over the overall Warlock changes, because that is now a tab in your spellbook. You probably heard me say this in some of the other videos linked below about Druid, Shaman, Hunter, DK, etc. But we're going to go over the new Warlock tab, then we'll go into the Affliction skills, and we'll talk about Warlocks in general, how it feels, the different rotation. Warlock is one of the more altered classes coming in Shadowlands. So let's just go ahead and jump right into it. Check the timestamps in the description to jump around if you need to. But number one thing I always remind everyone, we're at level 50. When you start 120 in BFA will equal to level 50 in Shadowlands, and then we're going to level from 50 to 60 in this beautiful place. So part of that, there was a stat squish and a health squish, so we're down to about 10k health, and our item level's around 75. So keep that in mind as you will see damage numbers coming up. Now that's that. Now let's go ahead and go into this. So as I mentioned, Warlocks did get a lot of changes. Well, I should say Affliction did, the other specs did not. We're still Builder Spender with Soul Shards, but we now have this tab. This tab is the Warlock specific tab. All of these abilities in here, for the most part, are across all of your Warlock specs, and they've brought back some pretty cool abilities back from, I guess, the grave. But yeah, so let's go ahead and go through it. Banish is exactly the same. Command Demon is exactly the same. Now, what isn't, because this will become an interrupt if you pull out a Fell Hunter or other abilities for your particular pets. This says it right there: Spell Lock, Seduction, Singe Magic, etc. What they did bring back is they brought back Curse of Recklessness and Curse of Tongues is already there, but Curse of Tongues. Now, Curse of Recklessness increases the enemy's physical damage done by 10%, but also increases the physical damage taken by 5% for 2 whole minutes. Now, you can only have one curse on the target at once. By the way, Curse of Agony doesn't count. You can have Curse of Agony and these curses. But yeah, this is one that maybe is used on bosses, depending on the boss fight. This could increase the damage taken, which is kind of cool. You know, I don't know if this stacks with the Windwalker increased physical damage taken. I would imagine it doesn't, but I'd have to test that out. Curse of Tongues forces the target to speak in demonic, increasing the cast time of all spells by 30% for 30 seconds. 30-second debuff, that's a pretty long time. Corruption is exactly the same. It is scaled up a little bit in its spell power, but we don't really know what that means, because again, we're only in leveling range right now, and our health pool is squished. We don't know if that means this was a real buff to this ability or not. We also have Curse of Weakness. Another curse increases the time between attacks of enemy attacks by 20%. We have our Hellstone, we have our Soul Well, we have our Demonic Portal, we have Drain Life. We have all of those things that you know and you love. We also have Curse of Doom. Curse of Doom previously was only for Demo, or I believe it was a talent option for some specs. I don't main Warlock, but I have played a bunch in BFA on specifically Destro, but Enslaved Demon is still here. And if we look over here, we see a lot of the abilities we know and we love. I have Kilrog, Fear, Health Funnel, Ritual of Summoning for your Warlock Gate. Your Shadow Bolt, your Soul Stones, and then on the other side, Unending Breath. We have your pets, Unending Resolve. And then we have our passives, increase some stamina. The Soul Leech is still here. I'm a little disappointed from playing, from a non-Warlock main that's really still here. This was something that in BFA was a huge healing factor in PvP. A little, I don't know. To me, I wish they would rework that a little bit, but they didn't really do that, unfortunately. But it is what it is, and we'll have to see how much healing that will really bring to Warlocks in BFA. The other change that they made was for Summon Demons. You do have the same demons, but their cast time is actually much longer. It's about 6 seconds, up from 2.5. So that is kind of interesting, something that's a little bit different than in BFA. In BFA, the spell cast is very quick. In this, it is not so much. So that's that. This is the Warlock abilities again. So if you have any questions on these, put it down in the description. We'll test some of the curses out on some mobs here in a second, but we want to go into the Affliction tab next. So into the Affliction tab, what we're going to do is just review what's here. Some classes have talents, or skills, I should say, that you get between 50 and 60. Affliction is not the case. Affliction doesn't really have to worry about that, so you pretty much have everything in Jump in Shadowlands. So looking at this, we have Agony. Agony is pretty much the exact same thing that it was before, stacking up, increasing shadow damage as it goes. The other changes here are to this is a passive for Affliction, that this is instant cast. By default, it is not. Affliction is the same, increases the damage of all your dots. Shadow Fury is the same. I think they increased the yards of this by 1 yard. Seed of Corruption is still same. This is a talent. This is a talent. Now, this is the new way of the Warlock. Unstable Affliction. Oh, yeah, I forgot. That's here. Afflicts the target with a damage over time for 7 seconds. You deal 10% increased damage to the targets affected by your Unstable Affliction. If dispelled, it'll do 600 damage to the Dispeller and silence them for 4 seconds. What you'll notice here is this is the limit of 1. Now, the way Affliction Warlock works now is you do not stack Unstable Afflictions. You do not dump your shards into Unstable Afflictions. If you've noticed here, it doesn't even say that this consumes a shard, because it doesn't. It's just a castable ability that's on not even a cooldown. So you can refresh this at any time. But the key here is you don't stack it. There's only one that can go up on any number of targets. So if you're fighting a pack of 3 mobs, you can only put this on one of those mobs. And then, you can put all your other dots on there. So that's a huge change to Affliction Warlock and the way that you are dumping shards and also stacking and doing burst damage. Now, Malefic Rupture, this is really the key of spending shards on a Warlock, on Affliction Warlock now. It's a very big deal. This is a total rework of how you're doing damage as an Affliction Warlock, focusing on that spread pressure. Your damaging periodic effects erupt, causing 300 damage per effect, meaning that if I have Agony, if I have Siphon Life, if I have Corruption, if I have Unstable, that's 4 times 300, 250. So that's about 1,000 damage when I cast this. And that would happen to every target that has all 4 of those buffs potentially. Obviously, there's going to be one of this, right? So that's pretty interesting in a much, 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 much different way that Affliction Warlocks will be handled in the Shadowlands. It's a much different way. It kind of motivates you to spread your dots up and manage your dots, not to try to spend a ton of global stacking your dots on a single target. So it's much different, and I actually really like it comparatively. They also buffed Shadow Bolt quite a bit in Shadowlands just by the spell power. Hopefully that will mean that will be actually a pretty useful talent. So yeah, so with that being said, those are pretty much the talents for the skills for Affliction Warlock. Before I go into the talents, I'll just show you what I mean with the Malefic Rupture. I'm going to dot this target up. I actually put my pet on passive. I'll dot this target up. I'm putting my 2 basic dots on them. Then I'll put UA here. There you go. And then I'll go ahead and Rupture. And it rots everything. And that's how I spend my shards. So that's pretty much how it works, and that's how the Rupture works on multiple mobs. Now, ideally, you'll want to have as many dots out at a time as you can before you start rupturing, because that's the only real spender for your shards, other than Seed of Corruption. Seed of Corruption throwing out a seed, which will explode, dealing AoE shadow damage, but that's pure large pack AoE. I see you multi-dotting, up to 5 targets or something along those lines for your dots, and then actually rupturing over and over to pop those. So it is definitely interesting, and also, going Siphon Life will give you another thing to pop. Now let's go into the talents for Affliction Warlock. Going in the first tier, Nightfall, Corruption damage has a chance to make your next Shadow Bolt to be instant and increase the damage of it by 50%. And if you haven't picked up Warlock in a while, you just need to remind yourself the main way and the only way really generating shards is through your Curse of Agony. So this, it doesn't even say curse anymore. I'm just a BC boy here, I guess. Agony is sometimes generating 1 soul shard. So that's what you want to have and maintain up on targets to be generating those shards. But anyway, this is one that hasn't been modified, but hopefully with the increased damage of Shadow Bolt, that will be something that is more desirable and will force more damage. There's also Drain Soul, changing your Shadow Bolt into a Drained Soul. If you kill the target, it'll give you a soul shard specifically, so that's another way to get a generator. Or Death Bolt. Death Bolt launches a bolt at the enemy, dealing 20% of the total remaining damage over time on the target in that kind of popping single target damage. The next tier, Absolute Corruption. Corruption is now permanent and deals 15% increased damage. The duration is also reduced to 24 seconds against players. Writhe and Agony, stacks can go up to 18. Siphon Light, these are the same. Demonic Skin, Burning Rush, Dark Pact, same. Sow the Seeds, Phantom Singularity, Vile Taint are all same. The only thing I would point out is that the Singularity one has gotten a little bit of an increased spell power scaling, but we don't know how effective that's really going to be. The next tier is pretty much the same, except for this guy, Tongue-Tied. Spells cast, and this is brand new, and this is what people were kind of getting really surprised about for Warlocks, saying that they have Immortal Strike. No, not quite. So spells casted, spellcasts afflicted by Curse of Tongues negate healing on that caster, absorbing the next X amount of healing received for up to 6 seconds. This means if I'm in PvP, and maybe even PvE. For some cases, I put Curse of Tongues, and then that mob starts to cast a spell. Every time he casts, that's going to put a healing absorption on him. Okay, and that's going to hopefully be a good thing in PvP, maybe something a little bit different to scare people away from casting without dispelling it. Now, it is it's all around Curse of Tongues, so you will have to have a healer that can dispel curses. If you don't, then it may actually become pretty effective. So let's say you're going against a Paladin, Mage, oh no, that's a bad example, Paladin, DK, Warrior, right? Let's say you're going against that composition, which would never happen, but let's say you are. You put this Curse of Tongues on the healer. The healer, first of all, is going to cast extremely slow, and any cast he does get off, he's going to start stacking a healing absorption on himself. So maybe that makes him a target that you can go. But that's, of course, over the 30 seconds, so you wonder how many heals he's going to be able to get out. And it's spell casts. I don't know if 100% if that means instant cast yet, but it is definitely something more interesting for Warlocks, especially a little bit more dynamic in PvP. Hopefully that's a good thing and not an overpowered thing, but we'll have to see. I'm not too concerned about that. Next here, Haunt is same. Grimoire of Sacrifice is same. Again, there are some changes in terms of the damage scaling, but again, we'll have to see how that works out. Shadow's Embrace. This is a new one. Shadow Bolt applies Shadow Embrace, increasing the damage you deal to the target by 3% for 12 seconds, stacking up to 3 times, meaning you can get up to 9% increased damage to that target, which is pretty darn cool. Now, the only other thing I skipped was Sow the Seeds. This now, Seed of Corruption now embeds Demon Seeds into 2 additional targets. This was 1, and now it is 2, so you get additional cleave. It does seem like they are giving Warlock a good look over and changing them so that they're going to be a little bit more mainstream viable, and also encouraging players to play them with these modifications. And then the last tier, there's nothing really else changing here, so that's that. So that's the talents for Affliction Warlock. Let me know in the comments what you think. If you think there was anything that maybe Blizzard should have brought back that they didn't, or how you feel about it. But that's that. The only other thing that I want to go over, since we can, is the Covenant ability. The Covenant ability, I'll just look it up down here, unless it's in general, I think. Nope, we'll look at it down here. This is the Covenant ability for the current Bastion area of Shadowlands. It says deals 520 arcane damage instantly and 840 over 18 seconds. If the enemy dies while affected by the Scouring Tithe, you generate 5 soul shards. If the target survives, Scouring Tithe cooldown is refreshed, meaning that if I basically apply this to someone, it's going to do some decent damage. Okay, it's going to be another dot for me to pop with my Rupture. Now, if he doesn't die through the duration of this, it's going to reset the cooldown, meaning that this is really something, if we're on a boss fight, I can apply over and over. It's basically another dot. I'm just kind of running away. I don't know why. So it's about to end. You're going to see this cooldown refresh in the bottom right. There it is. Now I can reapply it. It is kind of cool. It does give me another dot, and you wonder if that's going to be very strong for the Rupture, but no, it is what it is. It's not that bad of one. This is probably a pretty decent one, especially for Affliction Warlock. The cast time is feels bad at 1.8 seconds, but it's okay. And so with that being said, let's go ahead and kill a few mobs. Let me show you kind of how this also works kind of in practice, because I think that's pretty important to at least see. Now, the build I'm going is actually specifically for the Tower of Torghast with an extra dot with some other self-healing abilities, but I wouldn't necessarily go this in, raiding or PvP or anything like that. So again, you want to be putting up your 2 dots. You have I can put up Siphon Life. That's the 3rd one. I want to put up UA. If I'm single targeting, I can Malefic Grasp, right? And I'm kind of chunking pretty well. I'll put this up here in case you want to see the damage. So again, putting up my 2 dots, Siphon Life, UA. UA doesn't have a cost, right? I can do my Shadow Bolt setup, increase the damage taken by 3%, and I can spend my shards to pop my dots. And it does a pretty good amount of damage, and it's actually pretty satisfying. If I want to do 2 mobs, I'll put my 3 dots up. And then on the new one, I'll put UA, Shadow Bolt. And then we'll pop it. We're at 3 stacks. Remember, Curse of Agony. It's not even a curse anymore. That's going to be what is generating those soul shards. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's use Curse of Recklessness. This is going to increase the physical damage. It does, but the physical damage taken. Now, of course, it doesn't really help me. It helps my pet, I guess, but not really anything more than that. So let's go ahead and pop this. We have the Phantom Singularity also becoming a dot on the target. I'm not 100% sure if that's considered a dot, but it sure does feel like it. So that's pretty much that. So yeah, multi-dotting is going to become a thing in the Tower of Torghast. It feels pretty decent. It does feel a little slow, mostly because you're dependent on your pet, but it's pretty fun. Shadow Bolt hitting for about... Shadow Bolt's hitting for about 300. It isn't a high number, but it's not that low either. I do feel in PvP, if they did come out with a PvP talent that increased the amount that you drained, I would like that very much, because I do miss the Warlock SLSL spec. I know it was a meme back in Burning Crusade, but that's when I mainly played Warlock. But anyway, so this is pretty much it, guys. This is pretty much how it would go in the wild. I haven't even been using my Covenant ability. I should be doing that. So let's go ahead and pop that. So let's go ahead and pop all these on the target. I'm going to kill him while the Covenant ability is up, and it's going to not reset the cooldown, but it is going to be full shards, meaning I can go on to the next mob, and I can pop him real nice. And that's that. So Affliction Warlock in general, I actually really appreciate these changes. It makes it a lot less mongoloid of trying to stack UAs, and then they dispel them. You know, that whole playstyle in PvP, at least, to me, it could be very satisfying if you get them up and they start really cranking the damage. But the reality is, it's very kind of a meme, because you're basically, if they dispel that and they don't take, it doesn't do that much damage, doesn't silence the healer in PvP. It's like, oh, what the hell? I just spent 10 seconds stacking up all of my damage. I used all my resources, and now it's gone. You know what I mean? Like, that's pretty lame. So I think that it's kind of nice that all of our damage is now not related to soul shards until you want to just start popping them. So if they dispel this UA, I'll just cast another UA, and then I'll use my grasp to start popping it. You see what I'm saying? So like that, no cooldown on UA is kind of nice in that sense. Let's go ahead and wall. Coil for some healing. We don't want to go too far away. He'll reset, I'm sure. The only thing that I don't really have is a slow, which is a little lame. Let's put Curse of Attack Slower. Lol. But it is pretty satisfying. I would say at first I didn't really understand what was going on with Warlock, and now it does make a lot more sense. Oh boy, you might be dying here. So again, just kind of popping it up. Oh my god, please. Bada bing, bada boom, not bad. That was an elite, so they obviously are pretty hard. You might say, oh, that wasn't do that much damage. That's a real tough mob, especially with the non-tank pet. But with that being said, everybody, that's it for Affliction Warlock. I wanted to give you the kind of the breakdown, but I also wanted to show you a little bit of gameplay because it is very fun. The fact that it is not just predicated on stacking UAs and dumping those off is actually a better way, and a better way for PvP, meaning our overall damage is going to probably be higher because of that as well. So with that being said, guys, check the description for other videos from Shadowlands. I'll be streaming every day, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you want to come check it out, we'll be doing the tower on a bunch of different classes or some BFA PvP as we get ready for everything else that's going to be awesome in Shadowlands. Thanks, everybody, for the support. We'll see you in the next one. Take care.